We're ready for the start. They're off.
Hello again, everybody. Jeremy Plonk as we get ready for It's Official, joined again by Jeff Siegel, back from his desert sojourn to Las Vegas last weekend. Jeff, good to have you back. We've got 5 topics on the big board again this week to review. I would imagine between all the hoops and the hardwood, you got in a little racing viewing too.
Yeah, no, it was good. I mean, this day and age, you can watch racing wherever. You can watch it, on the side of the freeway if you have to, which I've done, by the way. Sometimes you pull over, and I put my ExpressBet account up. I watch the video, and then I get back on the road. I mean, you can always do that. But some good racing last week. Some good topics to talk about this week. Some good Thanksgiving Day and weekend racing to look forward to. For me, anyway, it's a good time because I don't have to work quite as hard for Del Mar. And then I get about a month off to prepare for Santa Anita and Gulfstream, which will be starting the same day after Christmas. So it's good to take a little bit of a deep breath, but still keep your finger on the pulse because there's some very good racing coming up this weekend towards the end of the year as well.
A couple programming notes for you. Of course, we record It's Official every Tuesday. Our Friday podcast, the first call, look ahead to the weekend with the Thanksgiving holiday this weekend. We're going to take off. It's our 1 week of the year that we do not publish the podcast. We go 51 weeks a year. So Jeff and I will be off this weekend. Hope you and your family enjoy a great Thanksgiving. We'll be back with the First Call podcast in 2 weeks then. Time to preview what will be a Cigar Mile weekend and big races like that around New York the first weekend of December. Turf racing coming back at Gulfstream Park in December, so we're looking forward to that as well. A lot of good stuff on the horizon as we speak. We're on the eve of opening day at Tampa Bay Downs on Wednesday. Parks has a mandatory payout tomorrow in their Philly Pick 5, over $350,000, I think, to carry over going into that for tomorrow. So a great week of betting and racing to come. Thanksgiving Day racing at Del Mar, at Churchill, a lot of great tracks around the country running on Thanksgiving Day itself. Of course, north of the border at Woodbine as well. Laurel Park with a big Thanksgiving Day card. And if you're in Maryland, Jeff, you got to get out to Laurel Park on Thanksgiving Day because they give away free pies. I mean, if you can't get pumpkin pie at the track, and word on the street is they're very good.
Well, that's a kind of an inducement to get out instead of you can sit home and watch it on TV. But if they're giving away pies, we're going to make that trek. I don't know if I'll fly across country for it, but if you're in the area, pretty good reason to show up.
Let's get to our 5 topics this week as seen in the previous days of racing and what we have to look forward to. They're timely and they're on the board now. And the first one is Justique. She justified the hype in the Desi Arnaz Stakes. Let's go back to Del Mar over the weekend and see the filly that some are comparing to Zenyatta.
And Justique is still last, and now she's got 10 lengths to make up and is beginning to pick up her stride. And Justique is catching up quickly now. She's going up on the outside of horses, picking them off one by one on the far turn. Meanwhile, it's Parody in front. Blessed Touch on the outside. Between those two, Naughty Lottie. In behind them, Hunting Coco. Justique is up to 5th. She's had a wide trip throughout. She continues to gain as they come to the top of the stretch. Blessed Touch, Justique on the outside now goes on by. She was far behind on the backstretch. She's going to be far in front at the wire. Justique, super impressive in the Desi Arnaz, eased up by 2.5.
That's the way you want to do it if you're coming from off the pace, Jeff. Never a feather in her path. She had smooth sailing, slingshotted out of the turn, went around them. Beautiful trip, and she does give you visions of Zenyatta stylistically at least, and she's got a beautiful pedigree by Triple Crown winner Justified. Same trainer as Zenyatta, of course, in John Sheriff. So there's a lot to like there with Justique. She didn't handle the 2 turns in the Chandelier, but boy, back around 1 turn, she was sparkling there at Del Mar.
Funny thing is, I mean, you look at her form, and she won the same way virtually when she broke her maiden in late July at Del Mar from way out of it. Then they stretched her out in the Chandelier and just off that one sprint, and she really hung, quite frankly. And I was thinking, maybe she's just a late running sprinter. We've seen this. She comes back, shortens back up to 7 furlongs, and does the same thing she did in her first start. And you scratch your head, and you say, how could she be just a late running sprinter? By Justify out of a mare by Bernardini. She is, in fact, a half sister to Motown, Uncle Mo, her colt, who won the Hollywood Derby over 1 1/8 miles. There is no way this filly is just a late running sprinter. But until she proves it, and she's going to prove 2 things. Number one, that she can route and do the same thing, and that she can win somewhere other than Del Mar. So there are still question marks, but man, you can't look much better than that, Jeremy. I mean, she just inhaled them and one eased up.
I dug into her pedigree a little bit. The second dam Multivita was a sprinter, right? She won the Thoroughbred Club of America. She made about $500,000 sprinting for Dallas Stewart. So there is some damn side sprint there, but there's plenty of genes, like you're talking about, to pull from top and bottom on the pedigree that you would think that she will get around a distance. She'll have 2 options staying at Santa Anita, maybe to do so, whether she goes short or around 2 turns. New Year's Day, the Santa Ynez at 7 furlongs, if they want to keep her going around 1 turn. If they want to wait to the 28th for the Las Virgenes, January 28th, they'll get a chance going 2 turns at a mile distance, the flat mile there at Santa Anita. Where would you like to see her next?
Wherever Baffert doesn't have one in there. He's loaded now with the fillies. He's just starting to bring them out. So you got to kind of look at that as well. Personally, if it was mine, I'd run in the 7/8. I mean, and then build her back up. I like foundation. In other words, I'm me with the 2 sprints and a stretch out angle. And she did not have that in the Chandelier, and I get that because you wanted to get it to grade 1, and you wanted to get that prep if you wanted to go to the Breeders' Cup.
Sure.
But now that that's out of the way, let's just build her up. It's still early in the year. I mean, it's not even an earlier year yet. We're not even in the new year yet. But get that 7/8 out of the way, and try to find out if she likes Santa Anita first, because it's a different track. And then gradually, she's by Justify. She doesn't figure to, get her best running legs until later anyway. But man, I don't know how better you can look than she did in that race, a legitimate race. And by the way, the horse that she went on by, blew away, was a filly named Blessed Touch, who ran second, one of those Gervin 2-year-olds that can run. She just broke her maiden Santa Anita by almost 9 lengths with a 90 buyer number. That was not chopped liver. She just blew away. So good race for the Desionars. It's just a listed race, but now it's time to win some graded stakes for her. And I think that John Sheriffs will bring her along conservatively. That's him. And we'll see how good she is. I'm looking forward to it.
I didn't mention the Starlet at Los Alamitos at the end of December that could fit. But like you said, a conservative trainer like John Sheriffs, I don't think they're pushing her to go to the Starlet. I think they're going to go 2 turns the way for the Las Virgenes.
Right, and at Baffert filly, we talked about the Star of the Future a week or 2 ago, Phasia. I think she's going in the Starlet, so you don't need to be running against her quite yet, I don't think.
Yeah, good reason to stay in the barn a little bit and wait for a different spot. As far as the Kentucky Derby Future Wager goes, Jeff, we've already had one of them. That happened Breeders' Cup week, ended on Breeders' Cup Thursday before we got the Future Stars Friday. Now this week, we've got take 2 on the Breeders' Cup, or on the Kentucky Derby Future Wager. The 40 pari-mutuel interests are back. There are 38 individuals. There's all other 3-year-old fillies, and then all other 3-year-old males in the 40 wagering interest. The all other males are 3 to 5 in the morning line, and none of the Bob Baffert horses, again, are eligible to be posted as individuals in the Kentucky Derby Future Wager. So at this point, they're part of that all others category. So you would expect this time of year anyway, the all others to be heavily favored, has been since the inception of the Kentucky Derby Future Wager. But with the Baffert horses subtracted from the individual interest, that makes the pari-mutuel favoritism stronger for the all others. But with the 40 interest, as we saw Breeders' Cup week, Jeff, you can get some big prices now, because a heavy all others and 38 individuals make for some interesting price plays.
It really does. I mean, we've got the morning line, so to speak, odds, and there are some really nice horses that you could play that I mean, obviously the all others with the Baffert horses grouped in that category, not to mention the other, I don't know, 20,000 foals that are, or 10,000 foals that are eligible. That's going to be a very heavy favorite of no matter what. But in looking at the morning line, Jeremy, of some of these others, the lowest price horse of the individual runners is Forte at 10-1. I don't know if there's value at 10-1 this time of the year.
Right.
Probably not. In fact, I'm certainly not. But I understand why people might gravitate to him because so far so good for Forte, and he's going to be the champion 2-year-old. There's no question about that.
Yeah, and off his win in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he's the horse everybody's talking about going into the winter.
Forte has come under a ride now. He's 5 lengths off the lead, being asked for more run, but he is picking up his stride, and he's going 3 wide, and he's coming up on the outside of National Treasure, and he's coming up after Cave Rock as they turn for home. Cave Rock cuts the corner. Forte on the outside. National Treasure between them. Verifying is next. Cave Rock is taken on here by Forte. The two of them coming down to the wire. Forte on the outside. Cave Rock along the rail. And Forte has upset Cave Rock to win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Then it was National Treasure and Verifying. Forte and Arad Ortiz have done it in the Juvenile.
You know, Jeff, going into that Juvenile, we were worried about the toughness and the lay it down on your belly nature that we saw in the Breeders' Futurity, in which Forte beat Loggins that day. And we thought to ourselves, boy, this is going to be tough for, I know I did, that Forte may struggle to come back in that race. If you think that the win by Forte then comes back and flatters Loggins, who ran so well in the Breeders' Futurity, now that Loggins has taken off the back half of the Breeders' Cup type part of the year, and Brad Cox is going to name this horse towards, you know, the Southern Route, Fairgrounds, Oaklawn for the Triple Crown Trail. What do you think of Loggins as a prospect now after seeing what happened in the Juvenile?
Well, we both liked him going into that race, the Breeders' Futurity, and he certainly ran really well. And we both at that time said, you know, he doesn't need to go back in the Breeders' Cup race. It's too much too soon. But Brad's got him. He's got some others in here, Giant Mischief, that are very impressive as well. But getting back to Loggins, the only concern I have with Loggins right now, and it's it's really a minor concern, but he hasn't worked since that race. And you always wonder about that because Giant Mischief, who was undefeated in 2 starts for Brad and won that highly rated allowance race, he's worked since that, you know. So it's not like Brad's decided to take his 3-year-olds and put them in bubble wrap for the next month or two. I mean, this colt ran hard, won what was virtually a non-winners of 2 that was like a grade 1. And he's worked since then, but Loggins hasn't. So I want to keep close tabs, and hopefully there's not too much left. We saw this last year with the Breeders' Cup winner who was topped on and never won. And didn't even run for like 6. So there's always the concern that there's something there that popped up that we don't know about. And that's why I really like to see Loggins, get back on the tab to make sure that if I want to take the 40-1 that the morning line has listed in this future pool, obviously it'll be determined when the bets come in, and that will be at the on Sunday. You know, the pool is open Thursday for Sunday, and I'd like to see him work a little bit. I want to ask you about another horse, Jeremy, because he backyard in Keeneland, where you're so in touch. Extra Anejo. I mean, he won 15-1. He won by 9 first time out. He's worked since then, so he's okay. So what do you think of him at 15-1? Is that a little short for a first out maiden winner?
Yeah, well, that's short for anybody this time of year. I mean, in the traditional start to the Kentucky Derby Future Wager in January, as it used to be, my cutoff was always 30-1 in January. Don't take anybody under 30-1. So if you're going to tell me the last week of November, I'm saying 50-1 is as low as you want to go on a horse at this point. Anything lower than that, to me, I don't think is a great gamble. I do think Extra Anejo is one of the most impressive 2-year-olds seen at Keeneland in the fall. Steve Asmussen's got that one. And I would expect this horse to be a major player at Fairgrounds this winter. But 15-1, no thanks. A horse who's a big price that we talked about, Brad Cox having a lot of hands to play, is Hit Show. He's 80-1 in the morning line. And this is the kind of horse, a candy ride, that you might get interested in. Hit Show was a very impressive winner at Keeneland. not getting the same kind of hype as some of the other Keeneland winners, but by Candy Riding out of Black Eyed Susan winner Actress. There's a good pedigree there with Brad Cox, and the Hit Show is going to take the same kind of path, right? Brad's going to have all these horses for the 3 or 4 or 5 races at Fairgrounds, the 4 or 5 races at Oaklawn. He's going to split them up between those, maybe send somebody up the Turfway towards the Spiral, or whatever they're calling that race these days, the Chevrolet or something like that. Like by the time we hit March or April. But Brad's going to have a lot of horses to try to divide and conquer with. And at right now, Hit Show at 80-1 in the morning line would be the one I would be interested in. Because one, the pedigree is already there. The price is there. And the connections are there. So that's kind of what you're looking for. Pedigree, price, and connections at this point.
I'll give you another one in the same vein, so to speak, at 60-1 is Signature. That's a Tappet Colt trained by Shug McGahee. Very impressive, I thought, breaking his maiden in his second career start. Did that by more than 4 lengths. And out of America, I say Tappet out of America Seeking the Gold. He should run all day.
Yeah.
And Signature, the only problem I have with Signature, I said, look, this is a perfect Remsen type horse. Yeah. But he hasn't worked since November 2nd. So, and that's after, his win. So I'm not sure where he's at. That would be a logical place to build on that horse. Mid-October, point for a December stake like that in your own backyard. But again, no works in almost 4 weeks now. So I don't know where he's at. But hey, at 60-1, maybe maybe you take a flyer there. But that's the way to go about it, really. You're right, Jeremy. You don't take 10-1, 15-1. I mean, even if the horse proceeds and does what you expect him to do, he's probably not going to be 4 or 5-1 anyway, but right. You're not getting that much of an edge. But if you're looking for a big price, and you mentioned the one that you like there, that's the way to go. Now, there's one other future book play that you can play, and that's the Sires.
Yeah.
The funny thing about the Sires is that, the Baffert horses, if you like the Baffert horse that you knew would be grouped into the mutual field, the 3 to 5, right? But as a sire, you can get the full price if you'd like. Yeah. And there's a bunch of Justifies out there. Now he's listed at 40-1 in the morning line for the sire pool. Right. I could gamble 41 that there's going to be a Justify that pop up. I know Baffert's got a few that he likes, and lots of them that haven't started yet. They can come out of nowhere, as he did. Yeah. So if looking at 40-1, and if you can get it, then you may take a flyer with one horse like that. I know Bob's got some Justifies that we haven't seen yet that are good, really good.
Right. The other backdoor approach to this, like you're saying, the sire wager is a good way to do it too. Is look at the exactas, and if you have a horse who you like, but the price is too short right now, maybe take a look at the exacta probables with all others second. So maybe the horse you like right now is 22-1, and you're like, that's just not juicy enough. Right. But with all others, maybe the exact is paying extremely well.
Sure.
That might be something, that you could look at and say, okay, now I'm getting 40-1, 50-1. Based on the exacta. So kind of peek around that way. We don't know what the probables are going to look like in those particular pools. So something to consider and look at. And when you exhaust those options and you still don't find value, sit back and wait. There will be more future wager pools. And I bet they're going to run the Derby the first Saturday in May too.
Probably. Although that wasn't true a few years ago, but
that's true. Yeah.
Have you ever had a major future book bet that was successful, Jeremy?
No,
you never have.
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I've kind of been live to Derby Day on a couple horses, and believe it or not, I like Giacomo early in the process.
Right.
And he ended up 50-1 on Derby Day anyway, right? And so I can't even remember what he was in the futures, but it wasn't anything remarkable because he was coming off like 3rd place in the Sham or something like that the week of the bet. So no, I mean, it's not something that's been highly successful for me. Now I do know this, like everybody and their brother had Fusaichi Pegasus at the initial 100-1, it seems like, when they first offered him in like December of 99. And then of course he won in 2000 because everybody on the planet was writing about how they were live to him in the future books. And I know Johnny Avello, I remember doing an interview with him at Wynn Las Vegas. He was the bookmaker there for many, many years. They got hammered on Foopeg. They got beat up bad on Foopeg. I know he said that was like the all-time, if you want to talk about the one time where Vegas got smoked on the futures, it was on Fusiichi Pegasus. So maybe everybody who claimed they had him at 100-1, maybe they did.
I don't know. And back in '89, I'll give you this great story. I was very familiar with Sunday Silence, even though he had just broken his maiden. That's all he did. So I went to Vegas because he had to bet at Vegas at that time. You couldn't.
Right.
There's no internet, and I made a rather substantial bet at 60-1 on Sunday Silence. But I wasn't sure, even at that early stage, that he could beat Easy Goer. You know, but I got 22-1 for him to run second, which they offered at that time. You could bet across the board. So at 22-1, I said, I don't even care if he can't beat Easy Goer.
Right.
All I want him to do is finish second. I got a good bet at 22-1. Well, I cashed on both, and that was the last year they offered place betting for future betting in the Derby. I don't know if it was me who knocked them out or not, but I missed it. But that was a very enjoyable. But that's the only one, quite frankly, that I've ever cashed. You know, I'm not sure I've spent all that money back yet. Probably have, but it was good then. But this is pari-mutuel. Now, back then, it wasn't pari-mutuel. It was bookmakers. Right. So you could get these crazy prices and be smarter than they were. And some people were.
I know for a lot of years, my Countdown to the Crown series was part of what they were using to help offer horses in the futures. And so I was tied in pretty tight with the books there and providing my list, looking at their list. And you think of all the options. You know, we had a list of, I don't know, 240, 250 horses or something like that at some point. You know, it's like you could get beat on one of these somewhere, but it's hard to come up with them. And then sometimes it's just, you know, a logical horse who comes to the fore. But the later these horses are coming to the fore now, January, the end of January, you know, maybe you can get ahead of this and catch a year when there is a good 2-year-old who becomes a great 3-year-old. But it seems like lately anyway, that these horses are literally coming almost out of the woodwork late in January. And some of them, Jeff, come much later than January. In fact, that brings us to topic 3 on the big board. It's Rich Strike. He returns to Louisville in the Clark Handicap on Friday, the Kentucky Derby winner. We joked that Rich Strike really didn't even get into the Kentucky Derby race until they hit the wire, and you can't fault track announcer Larry Comas for that. None of us were thinking about him back on the first Saturday in May.
Epicenter has taken the lead as they arrive into the final furlong. Sandon is coming after him. Epicenter and Sandon, these two, stride for stride. Simplification down the outside is next. They're coming down to the wire. Epicenter, Sandon. Rich Strike is coming up on the inside. Oh my goodness! The longest shot has won the Kentucky Derby. Rich Strike has done it in a stunning, unbelievable upset.
So he's back to the scene of his greatest score. And Jeff, honestly, the scene of his only scores. He won that maiden race by double digits. What was it? Maiden claimer 30. He won by 14, 17, whatever it was, back when he was claimed away from Joe Sharp. You look at Rich Strike at Churchill Downs. He's had 3 starts, 2 wins, and a second place finish. His second, a very good second in the Lucas Classic. Everywhere else, he's had 9 starts, and he's been off the board 6 times with 3 third-place finishes. I mean, is he just street sense without the talent somewhere else? Or
I guess
is Churchill going to bring him back to the winner's circle? What do we make of Rich Strike this Friday?
You pointed it out. I mean, in the last 10 starts of his career, he's run 12, but in the last 10, he has 1 win, and you just saw it, you know, so it seems like unlikely. And here's another thing that kind of, I don't know, make what you want of it. But you remember after Rich Strike won the Derby and everybody expected him to run back in the Preakness, and the trainer said that he needs more time. I know this horse. It's too quick. I can't do that. Well, he's coming back in 3 weeks, so apparently that's out there. You know,
I guess,
somehow,
I haven't even thought about that hypocrisy.
Somehow I think there may have been an issue that we didn't know about in the interim there. But anyway, he's back, and really, if you look at his form, at least if you look at his speed figures, the Derby really wasn't a fluke. He's earned, out of his last 4 starts since then, he hasn't won them, but other than the Belmont. He's earned triple-digit buyer speed figures in his last 3. He's just been in monster races.
Yeah.
I mean, distant fourth to Flight Line wasn't bad in the Classic, beaten ahead in the Lucas Classic by a legitimate, Grade 1 horse and Hot Rod Charlie. There's nothing wrong with that. So, yeah, I mean, to me, it's just a matter of whether or not he can take the quick turnaround. And if he can, I don't see any reason why he can't win this race. Although you and I both were pretty bullish on West Will Power in the Fayette at Keeneland. And this race, the Clark, which is Friday, and it goes as the 11th race, post time 5:56 Eastern. I'll be watching because Rich Strike is going to be one among a very major player among the older horses next year. And West Will Power at 5, he's pretty salty himself. He's come out of nowhere, but I think he might be really dangerous in this race, Jeremy. What do you think?
Yeah, he caught a race that didn't have a lot of pace in it at Keeneland, and his stablemate was in there, Folsom, and he looked like he would get the jump on him, which he did. This race here, when you come back in the Clark on Friday, outside of Injunction, who's coming off a race in the ACAC around one turn, I don't think there's much difference in the pace scenario than what we saw in the Fayette at Keeneland. So, yeah, West Will Power, probably the horse to beat back again. And if you're going to beat Rich Strike, if you consider him the horse to beat in here, he's a deep closer, right? So how you beat a favorite is usually with the reverse style. If the race sets up for a closer, he's probably the best horse and wins it. So the styles make the fight, as they say. And so to beat a horse like Rich Strike in this race with a small field, you're probably going to do it by being in front of him the whole time. And so a horse with some speed like West Will Power would make a lot of sense in the Clark. There hasn't been a lot of success of horses coming out of the Breeders' Cup Classic and then going to the Clark. I looked this up on the BetMix database. The only one to do it in the last 8, 9, 10 years was FNX, the horse who ran in behind in 2015, ran in behind American Pharaoh at Keeneland in the Classic that year, came back and won the Clark Handicap. We did see Owendale run a good second in the Clark, but that was coming out of the Dirt Mile. So horses coming out of the Classic, I believe there have been 9 of them. The only one to hit the board was the winner, FNX, back in 2015 for Jimmy Jerkins. So it's not a real successful run. Horses are primed to run their best in the Breeders' Cup Classic, right? I mean, that's the $6 million race. So that afterthought race sometimes doesn't get their A performance. And Rich Strike's not the kind of horse, I don't think, who can give away races if he doesn't have his A performance. I mean, I think he's got to run his race in order to win. He doesn't lay over competition just on name alone. The Derby and the Roses are nice. He'll be painted on the side of the building for history to come. He earned it that day, but he's got to earn the rest of his victories moving forward. And with a horse with such a dependent running style being so far back, I think he's vulnerable. I would think West Will Power is probably the horse to beat again on Friday.
And even though West Will Power was handed the Fayette because nobody went, he went the first quarter that day in 25. I mean, it was just kind of a gimme type of race.
Right.
But he has won in the past sitting second. It's not like he needs the lead.
Right.
And with Injunction being used as a target here, I think Saez and West Will Power can kind of draft over from his outside post, just sit, stalk, and then go on with it. And he's not quite as fast as Rich Strike is on numbers, but he's getting better. And Rich Strike laid his body down, as all horses do on Breeders' Cup Day, because you can't win. There's nothing wrong with running second and third with those purses.
No.
And that's one of the reasons why the quick turnaround hasn't been successful, because you don't get an easy race in the Breeders' Cup. I mean, you got to run, even if you're not going to win it, you're trying to run second and third, laying your body down. And whereas that's what Rich Strike did to finish fourth, West Will Power, freshened since late October, been training specifically for this race. I mean, for Brad Cox, I would be personally, I'd like to see it, but I personally would be very surprised if Rich Strike beats West Will Power.
If he gets in the winner's circle and gets his picture taken, we'll applaud him again, and it'll be quite a feat. I think it's been like one horse in 80, 90, 100 years that's won the Derby and the Clark in the same year
Right.
From the folks at Churchill and their stats department. So that'll be interesting. Another place that where you can see a picture of Rich Strike will be on Saturday at Churchill Downs, the day after he runs in the Clark. Jeff, they're going to bring him over for paid photo opportunities. I saw between $100 and $400 if you want to get your picture taken with the Kentucky Derby winner. What do you make of that one?
I think you better win on Friday. There might not be anybody in there taking him up on that. they're limiting it to 80 tickets, 80 photo opportunities there.
Right.
You can be single person, 2 people, group of 6. Prices range from $125 to $400. If they got 80 people, or 80, tickets with 4 people each, they could raise up to $32,000. And the horse probably wants his fair cut of that. I'm sure he's doing all the work. But I don't know if it's cheesy or whether it's okay. That doesn't bother me. I mean, that's their horse; they can do whatever they want. I mean, I used to get autographs for free when I was 10 years old, and now they charge for that. So I guess what the heck? And I'm more curious to see how many people take them up on this, for money. I mean, I don't know. I have no problem with it. There have been people on Twitter who think it's not really cool, but what do I care? Live it up. If you want to spend the money, go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing with Rich Strike is he's going to wake up on the morning after a race, and he's going to be like, what? You're dragging me back to the paddock?
Right.
Am I running again? That would be the only question. It's not like a paddock schooling session leading up to a race where a horse knows that they're getting up to do something. They're kind of coming back to the track the next day. That would be the only thing. But if he's on his manners and he's the kind of horse that handles something like that, he tried to kill the outrider. I know that. So
right, exactly.
If he likes racing fans as much as he likes outriders, you might get your money's worth for that 400. You might lose a chunk of your shoulder in the photograph as well. Yeah. Let's see how it all turns out. The way things go, Murphy's Law, we'll be talking about this next week. Something will go horribly wrong with this, and we will be talking about it next week. Let's go to topic number 4 on the big board this week. And Jeff, you've been reading in the news about lobbying firms that are trying to change the dynamics of New York racing and what we see at the major facility at Belmont Park. Give fans a little bit of a sense where we're going here with topic 4.
Well, there's a lobbying coalition formed last year, and they tried to get this through last year. It didn't work. But they're going to try again next year, trying to get funds or pass legislation to that will provide $450 million, I should say, to kind of what they say, downsize Belmont or make it smaller, take that grandstand and make it more modern in the sense that it's not so big and long and empty, and use that area as they did for the hockey arena to use it for something else, because right now nobody sits in those seats anymore. Belmont, even during Belmont Day, I don't think they quite fill it up. Take that grandstand, tear it apart, build a much more smaller, economical structure that would fit the crowd sizes they're getting now, and then use that extra acreage for something better or different or something else that they could maybe generate revenue with. So if they can get that money, and IRA obviously is for this, and then throw in the idea that we'll raise aqueduct and we'll use that area. I don't know how many acres there are, but generate revenue there. It kind of makes sense. You don't need that monster Belmont Park grandstand anymore. It was rebuilt in the 60s, and nowadays you don't get crowds like that. I think it's a good idea. I mean, it's not my money again, so go ahead and do it and take that land and build something else. I mean, they certainly use that parking lot for good measure when they built the hockey arena. Maybe they can do something else. So I can tell you this, and I think you've experienced the same thing. It is sort of depressing for me to go to a racetrack like Belmont or even here at Santa Anita, where you've got this great grandstand that was built in the 30s and the 40s and was able to accommodate people like that. Just to be empty every day, it's depressing. It's just, let's use that part of the structure and get rid of it and build something different. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, and this isn't just to horse racing, right? This isn't just an indictment on the crowds in horse racing. in almost every city in America for a half a century, sports franchises across different leagues shared the same buildings, right? Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia is where the Eagles played. It's where the Phillies played. And Oakland Alameda Coliseum was where the Raiders played and the baseball teams played as well. And the football games were played over a dirt infield, right? And baseball games aren't made to have 80,000 people in the stadiums, but the football crowds are. So you had these big hollow shells of places where 25, 30,000 people at a baseball game look like you were in a cavern somewhere, And so we got into these smaller ballparks, the Camden Yards generation that returned in the 90s. And everybody in Major League Baseball went back to these smaller baseball parks to fit the crowd size and the intimacy of the game and the event and to make it a much better experience versus going sitting in the, in a huge coliseum somewhere to watch a baseball game. I mean, I watched a baseball game in the Astrodome once, and it was like, oh my God, this is like what do they call the ninth wonder of the world was the Astrodome.
Yeah, sure.
And when it was completely filled for a football game and the Houston Oilers were going great guns, it probably was, a wondrous place to watch a sporting event. But I watched a Houston Astros baseball game in an empty Astrodome once, and I'm like, this experience isn't what I came for. This wasn't what I expected. And so the same way with these major facilities that were built in the 1930s when everything was, the subway and the train was taking everybody to the track and dumping them off at noon and picking them up at 5 after the races. And everybody had to come there for that 5 hours to make a bet. Now with First Bet, Express Bet, all the ADWs, all the different ways that you can place a wager in the world, it's just not necessary. So I'm with you. There was also, too, an antiquated history of racetracks about racing dates, right? I mean, states only allotted a track so many dates, and there are literally places in America where racetracks were built across the street from one another so that they could run part of the year at one of the tracks and part of the year at the other track to get around the state legislation and the legality of it all. Charlestown had a place called Shenandoah, literally right behind it. The two grandstands almost kissed each other.
Right.
And one oval was on one side and one was on the other side of the street. And they ran at Shenandoah the dates they were allowed to run in West Virginia, and they ran at Charlestown the dates they were allowed to run because of the state of West Virginia. To have Aqueduct and Belmont, I believe it's 8 miles apart across the Belt Parkway. And up the Cross Island. I've made that drive many times, but I think it's 7-8 miles as the crow flies. I know we get into some things with New York, right? Because one's in Queensboro and then Elmont's actually part of Long Island. So maybe you get into some of those politics of not wanting to close one or the other. But in all logistical sense, the New York Racing Association needs not operate two major plants like that close together, 7-8 miles apart. So it would make a lot of sense. Where are you going to put the horses? Because they train at Aqueduct year round. Well, maybe that's part of the Belmont downsizing, right? There's a lot more room for stables when you take a half a mile of grandstand out of the place.
Yeah, I Gulfstream Park downsized several years ago,
right?
And now, other than maybe Pegasus World Cup, they really don't need a lot of seats there.
No.
And so I think that might be kind of maybe something that they can look at and maybe do what Gulfstream did. I think they'll probably make it bigger. But your point, I mean, you talked about Belmont and having all that extra acreage that they could build. I mean, if legalized gambling ever showed up here in California, which I doubt will happen anytime soon, Santa Anita could take part of their grandstand and build a beautiful state-of-the-art sports book type of thing. I think people would flock, there to watch the races and maybe be able to bet on sports. So I think that's the long term, very much long term after the last election. But I think what Belmont's going to do is going to be good. I don't like going to the racetrack when it seems like I'm the only one there, which you get the impression when you go to Belmont and maybe sometimes even Santa Anita. So what they're doing, as long as the taxpayers don't have to pay for it, which according to what I'm reading, they won't, then I think it's going to be a good thing. Now, anyway, all this will come to fruition, if it's going to come to fruition, next year. And then how long it takes to actually build it or reconstruct everything, I don't know. But it's at least, I think it's a step in the right direction.
And you think about the future prospects at Pimlico and all the sketches and drawings we've seen of what a downsized Pimlico could look like for a big festival kind of event, and using the property for so many different things, the farming and the the urban crop plans and things like that they have in Maryland potentially to help, feed people in the city and stuff. There's so much you can do with this land. It's so much acreage involved in these racetracks. Let's see what happens in New York, but they've got good momentum in New York for right now. I think for the most part, I think people will have a good feel for New York racing right now in the direction that it's going, and maybe they've got the momentum to do it. It's all about the momentum. It's just like when Smarty Jones came along, and in Pennsylvania, the racetracks were about ready to shutter, and nobody wanted the racetracks to have slots. And then Smarty Jones came along, cover of Sports Illustrated, Good Morning America. Everybody in the world said horse racing's cool. And Governor Ed Rendell, who was the governor at the time of Pennsylvania, got on that train and said horse racing can be cool. Let's couple it with the racetracks and the casino licenses. And one horse made that kind of difference. Momentum. Whether it comes from a horse or something positive that's going on. Momentum is so important in timing with these things, and we'll see where the next twist in the story takes us with New York. Let's go back to the big board for our fifth and final topic, which has been the case throughout the course of the second half of this year, basically since Saratoga Del Mar. Our fifth topic each week talks about the stars of tomorrow, some horses that we want to take a look at. About 6 days ago, last Wednesday, Dazzling Blue was a nice-looking winner for Brad Cox, a 2-year-old filly by Into Mischief at Churchill Downs. And a little bit sooner from that one, we saw over the weekend a Curlin filly, Lord Miles, or a Curlin colt, Lord Miles, at Gulfstream Park. Jeff wants to spotlight this one this week. Saffie Joseph trains.
They cut the quarter with a furlong to run. Big data at a big price series. Upset minded. He takes over from Vamos Viejo. Lord Miles starts to tower up, though, with a 4 outside. And it's Lord Miles and Zayas who takes over the lead here. But we get to the final 16th of a mile. Late run up on the extreme outside from There Be Dragons. But it's Lord Miles who draws clear to win easily.
Big win there. The voice of Gabe Pruitt. You heard subbing in for Pete Aiello there at Gulfstream Park. It would sound a little bit different to you. Jeff, good looking win for Saffie Joseph and this Curlin homebred.
Yeah, first of all, when you get a Curlin that wins like that, you take notice, because nothing Curlins ever do at 2 are going to be better than what they're going to do at 3 and 4. So you look at Lord Miles, and he only ran 3/4 and 13, but it was a kind of a dead track that day, and he never even took a deep breath from the furlong pole to the wire. Still won by almost 6 lengths, obviously not beating that much. But Saffie does really, really well during Gulfstream in the winter, and he does get his 3-year-olds ready to run, and some of them win stakes, and this one looks like he's going to get nothing better. This race, again, only 3/4, but giving every indication that he will run long and develop. Got a really nice pedigree, again, by Curlin, out of an young unraced, majestic warrior mare who is a half sister to 3 stakes winners, including Caledonia Road, who was a Breeders' Cup Juvenile filly winner, and 2 other major graded stakes winners. Really good family, again, by Curlin, and winning like that. He's going to get tested when the championship meeting starts after December 26th, but he's one I'm going to watch, because the way you can't win any easier than that. And we'll, down the road, we'll just, I'm very curious to see how quickly he develops and how good he may very well be.
A natural progression for Lord Miles could be the Mucho Macho Man Stakes. It's a 1-turn mile, so they get to stay 1 turn, stretch out a little bit, and the heavies aren't quite coming in yet for the Mucho Macho Man that you'll get later in the Holy Bull, the Fountain of Youth.
Can I make a future bet on that? Can I make a future bet on the Mutual Macho Man race right now with Lord Miles? I don't care who's going to be in it. He'll be in it. So I'm making my pick right now, because you pointed that out, and I wasn't thinking in those terms, but thanks for bringing that up. That's my pick right now.
Verse will be jumping. Yeah. Somebody in the Twitterverse are going to take you up on that bet, Jeff. I'm sure they're going to give you odds, and I want to take you up on it.
Okay.
That recaps our 5 topics this week. Justique was definitely justifying the hype at Del Mar. Our Derby futures, we gave you a couple horses at 60 and 80 to 1 to consider for Derby future wager this Thursday through Sunday. Rich Strike is back at Louisville, and we'll see if he's in the winner's circle. We know he's posing for pictures on Saturday. We talked about the potential of downsizing Belmont Park and the pluses that go with that. And in our Stars of Tomorrow segment, we talked about Lord Miles down at Gulfstream Park, and also a tip of the cap to the filly Dazzling Blue last week at Churchill Downs in the Philly ranks. That's going to wrap up this edition of It's Official. We hope that you have a great Thanksgiving holiday coming up on Thursday. Jeff and I will take Black Friday off from our weekend handicapping podcast, and we'll be back with you next Tuesday on It's Official to wrap up what promises to be a very big weekend. Jeff, let's finish with this bonus topic of the week. I didn't even think of this, but best side dish on Thanksgiving. What are you going for?
Cranberry sauce.
Cranberry sauce.
That's what I like.
I could go for that.
Yeah.
You're not going to keep me off the sweet potatoes. I can tell you that.
I tell you what, I'm going to my sister's on Thursday. The whole family. I don't have a big family, but the whole family will be there. And I said, look, you cook for all these people, and I want to pay for the food. Right. And I do this all the time. And she says, no, I got it. I got it. She said, okay. So I better make some money tomorrow or something, because this is not going to be cheap for me. I can tell you that. But
inflation's big at the grocery store right now, Jeff. So you picked the worst year for somebody to take you up on the offer.
I know. Well, that's probably why she did, because she probably bought all this food and figured, wow. And then I said, I got to pay for some of it. I mean, I'm only one of 11 that's going to be there, but the answer, the response of okay was pretty quick. I got to tell you that. So anyway, I got to make money. I got to make money in the next couple of days because I got to pay for this stuff.
All right, extra cranberries for Jeff if he can knock down an exacta between now and Thursday. We'll be back with you next week. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.